Hello and welcome everyone to the LINX Distinguished Speaker Series. My name is Norani Nimpono. I'm the Head of Global Engagement here at LINX and I'll be moderating today's session. So welcome to all of you who are joining us live at the webinar. Those who are participating live, do make sure to use the chat function to chat amongst yourself, but also try to think of good questions to ask the speaker. We do like it when we make this session a bit more interactive. And welcome to all of you watching it on YouTube live afterwards. Oh, sorry, not live, but on YouTube afterwards as well. So the LINX Distinguished Speaker Series is a series of talks gathered here at LINX by experts in the industry who have deep knowledge and expertise and often a unique perspective on a particular subject. And it is my great pleasure today to introduce today's speaker, Ann-Marie Eklund Löwinder. She is a well-known person in the DNS and security community and to a lot of you out there in the industry. Ann-Marie is the Chief Information Security Officer at the Swedish Internet Foundation. Ann-Marie is ranked as one of Europe's leading experts on IT security. She's one of the 7 key holders of the Internet, a small group of trustees able to access a last resort measure to reconstruct the Internet in the advent of calamity, thereby safeguarding its security. She's a member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering Sciences for Information Technology, board member of the Swedish Transport Administration, Strålskyddsföreningen, the Irish CCTLD Administrator, IEDR, and the Swedish Law and Informatics Research Institute, IRI. She's also a member of the Cybersecurity Council of the Swedish Civil Contingency Agency, MSB, a member of the Swedish government's Digital Advisory Board and of the Swedish Standards Institute, SIS. Ann-Marie is a frequently consulted expert in public and governmental inquiries on matters relating to the Internet and security. So who's better suited to talk about what challenges we are meeting in cybersecurity today? So without further ado, I will hand over to Ann-Marie Eklund Löwinder. Ann-Marie, please go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Norani, and thank to LINX for making this possible. That was a really long introduction and well, it makes me thinking of what time does to us and how much you learn. I will start to share my screen with you. Hopefully that would be the right one. This is an important area and I've been doing this for some time now. I'm actually very proud of being one of the trusted community representatives and one of the crypto officers. This is one of my proudest moments when I was on the milk package in Sweden, educating people about what DNS is, what DNSSEC is, and how it works, which is really, really exciting. And some of my American friends told me and asked whether I was lost, because that is the way they're using milk packages. But education is a very good way to use these items, actually. So I'm working for the Swedish Internet Foundation, and we are the CCTLD for the Swedish top-level domain.se and .nu. We are also running ZoneMaster, which is a joint project with AFNIC, where you can measure or test your DNS appearance on the internet, DNS and IP appearance. We are measuring internet access speeds through something called Bredbandskollen, broadband checker. We run Internet Museum, which is a digital museum of the Swedish history on the internet. We are publishing Swedish and the Internet and annual statistics, which is unfortunately only the summarizes in English. And we put a lot of effort in public education on and about the internet for both school and private persons. And our vision is that everyone dares, will, and can use the internet and its services in a good way. To achieve that, we need users that are knowledgeable and aware, not afraid and suspicious. The more you know about how things works, the better you know how to keep out of trouble So I've been doing this for more than 30 years, working with information security that has more and more become cybersecurity, and it's only a matter of definitions. Internet is the biggest communication platform that ever existed. And it started, of course, with short messages, Usenet news, file transfer. Some of you were probably around by the time when we all thought that the future was bright and full of hope. And just you imagine what we could do with this infrastructure. Today, even critical infrastructure that satisfies our basic needs as electric power, water, railways, and other distribution networks, they are centrally monitored by modern IT systems because you want to be more effective, you want to save costs, and if these monitoring systems will fall victim of cyber attacks, it will lead to serious disturbance because they are connected to the internet. And to run and monitor the networks, internet has become more and more indispensable. And yet we do not spend much time on making the basic internet infrastructure more robust, resilient, and redundant. There's a lot of organizations, companies, governments, and others who have not deployed the security functions that has been standard for many years in their own environment. I'm talking about security in DNS, security in web applications, and security in mail, which is the basic functions that we all depend on. And that is something you really have to take a closer look at. Another thing that might be a problem is that our services, they are leaking. They're leaking data seriously. This visualization comes from information is beautiful. I don't know whether you have come across of that before. And increasingly sophisticated hacking has altered the scale of data loss by orders of magnitude. For example, it started with an inside job breach with a data broker called Court Ventures in like 2012, something like that, where they lost 200 million records. And since then, there have been, today there are larger hacks and increasingly becoming the norm and happens frequently. As you can see, if you visit this site and scroll down, you can see it was not so many data leakages earlier days, and now it has become like something that happens every single week almost. And a lot of user has been pwned. Have you checked whether you are among all those records that have been leaked into huge databases that are watched by both black hat hackers or white hat hackers to make sure that you are not abused, that you have not been hacked and your accounts haven't been hacked? We do some serious sins when it comes to password management, for instance. I used to call it the password paradox. We know that it's wrong, but we do it anyway. We reuse passwords in several sites. We use too short passwords, and we don't think that anything bad can happen, and that's couldn't be more wrong. And we also force users to change their passwords frequently, which is absolutely counterproductive. And moreover, a never-ending stream of apps finds its way to our daily internet presence. Some of them can actually carry major risk in terms of malicious code. Malicious apps are still finding their way onto, for instance, Google Play, even though Google removed them when they get notified. 700,000 malicious apps was removed from Google Play in 2017, which was a 70% increase compared to the year before. One of the most well-known and widely covered malware who was sneaking onto the Play Store is called Joker. It was bypassing Google defenses, and in September 2019, it had infected 500,000 devices. And in January, Google confirmed that they had removed again around 1,700 apps carrying the Joker, as known as bread malware. And yet we trust mobiles, we trust apps, both containing vulnerabilities, and we don't treat them properly. When you connect something to the internet, your device becomes part of the internet and exposed to millions of computers. You should be aware that the risk of interfering with malicious code and intrusion attacks is serious. If you open a file, if you have which is attached to an email, you click on a link, you visit a website, every time you actually put to risk to be infected by malware. And whenever you connect something to the internet, it's visible to the internet. And if it's visible, it's reachable. And if it's reachable, it is a potential target for attack, unless you do something to prevent that. You may use Strava, which is this picture is showing, which is a search engine for Internet of Things. And you should do that as a self-defense to make sure that your presence on the internet are not too obvious and that you're not just widely open for attackers. So I would recommend you to try it to see if your network, your system, or your devices are visible and vulnerable. And we also are trusting the cloud today. We trust the cloud with a lot of information and with a lot of services. And some of these are huge actors on the tech industry. For instance, Amazon, they had a serious disruption the other week that lasted for several hours, and a lot of services, especially in the US, was affected by this interruption. But some of them was quite unexpected consequences, at least for people who are not using Internet of Things in the and connecting your house to a very serious level. I caught this on Twitter. One person couldn't vacuum clean because US East 1 was down. And another person complained that the doorbell didn't work because the IWS US East 1 was having issues. And I think for most people, when they do buy a device that they connect to the home network, they don't really understand what the consequences could be. And this is just harmless stuff to me. I mean, I would like that excuse not to be able to vacuum clean, but still, that's me. And when you, that was not what I'm, the fact is that computers and companies are not capable of securing every device in the network, which gives cyber criminals and cyber terrorists a possibility to take hostages with no more than one insecure, unprotected device to attack. You need to protect the entire, everything, the entire network with all the devices. They just want to find a single little hole, a single little breach. And they are not only a big risk for companies all over the world, they have potential to seriously damage other organizations on the internet itself. This is a picture to illustrate how a casino got hacked through its wireless fish tank thermometer connected to the network, unknowingly connecting it to the administrative network, giving attackers access to customer database, and it made it possible to retrieve all the information about the casino's biggest gamblers. This is a very well-known story, but I would again want it to be an illustration of when we don't think of what risks we take in connecting everything and everywhere all the time. You might expect that we today know how to build security by default or by design, but unfortunately, security is still, in best case, something that is considered possible to add on later. When you innovate, you have the function in mind, trying to make something that works perfect for the purpose it aimed for. But it's important to think about the fact that what's a tool in some person's hands is a weapon in other person's hand. A group of researchers from the Medical Device Security Center found vulnerabilities in the wireless communication with some heart monitoring devices that allow someone to actually deactivate them remotely while still in a patient. Close to 500,000 pacemakers was recalled by the American Food and Drug Administration, FDA, with a class 1 recall, which is the most serious type of recalls they offer, fearing that certain weaknesses in the devices, they rightly reported it as They could be abused to drain the batteries or even change the pacing frequency of the patient, resulting in fainting, lightheadedness, and death. So as you fully understand, this is serious matters that we need to consider more often and think about. It's not that you can, I mean, we used to use the internet for things that is not time critical, it's not sensitive, it's nothing important in a sense, and now we are using it for just everything without thinking. And even with the best intentions, you can end up doing a bad thing. The health app Strava heat map shows heat made by aggregated public activities over the last 2 years. I'm sure you have heard about this incident before, but the purpose was certainly not to reveal military secrets. It was to show other joggers popular routes so they could run the same route to make company with others or see what's the popularity about. But again, what's tool in one hand is a weapon in somebody else's. So this was this heat map revealed a military base camp in Afghanistan. Unknowingly, of course, it was not their intention. But while we have become better protecting our technical systems from intrusions from the outside, social engineering is used more and more to get under the skin, to get behind the perimeter protection built up as organizations to protect information and systems from evil hackers. But by manipulating users, an attacker may abuse persons' natural tendency to trust others rather than using technical vulnerabilities or weaknesses, or use a combination of both to get to the inside and from that attack your systems. And from the inside, they can make much more effective attacks or efficient attacks than otherwise, because we have become quite good at protecting our systems, but not so much when you have someone from the inside. It was a perfect sunny summer afternoon in Copenhagen when the world's largest shipping conglomerate began to lose its mind. 2017. Firstly, it was suspected to be an unusually brusque move from Maersk's central IT department, as Wired explained it, a little loved entity in England that oversaw most of the corporate empire with 8 business units, 564 offices in 130 countries around the world. But it wasn't. This was the massive breakout of NotPetya. And the aftermath was 4,000 reinstalled servers, 45,000 reinstalled personal computers, and a loss of $300 million. Some claims the losses was even bigger. And the reinstalling was heroically made over a period of 2 weeks. And still, this was a wake-up call for so many huge companies, because we are all possible potential victims. Size doesn't matter. And again, March 2018, 1 full week of disconnection. This actually was a very, very long stretched disconnection, because the government decided not to pay the ransom. This was a ransomware attack, and they decided to, no, we will not pay, we will get back by restoring our systems. And even though the government's computers, hard disks, and printers came alive again for the first time in 5 days, the citizens still couldn't pay traffic tickets, water bills inline, or report damages through the web, which is some of the services municipalities actually offer. And travelers in one of the world's most trafficked airports couldn't even connect to the wireless network. And you know how that is, maybe not these days, but it used to be pain. And now we have ended up with a cause of death from ransomware. The female patient who suffered from a life-threatening illness, she was rejected on the night of September 11th this year by the city of Düsseldorf University Hospital And she died after the ambulance carrying her was diverted to another city, Wuppertal, which was 30 kilometers away. The cyber attack in itself was not intended for the hospital, according to a report from the German news agency RTL, but was aimed at a nearby university. And the attackers, they stopped the attack immediately after the authorities informed them that it had caused, or actually closed a hospital. But then it was too late. So I think this will be an interesting case to see whether this kind of cyber attack actually can be a homicide case. And it is, as I mentioned, the attacker's advantage. We need to protect everything. They just need to find one single weakness. And we must be aware that this is only the cases that reach the news. There are so many cases that we are not aware of, that we will never learn that it happened, because people are more willing to pay ransom than they are to report it to the police force, for instance. And they certainly not wanted to end up in the news. Ransomware has increased dramatically in the last 12 to 18 months. Serious organized crime has stepped on the field. Criminal networks, which operate according to a franchise-like model, they break into the systems of various organizations, steal data, or lock systems down with cryptographic methods. And then the victim is pressured for money, either to get the data back or to prevent the data being published. The websites that attackers use to publish the information, they are widely known, and security people from both black hats and white hats keep an eye on all these databases, and either they can help you or they can harm you. Cybersecurity Ventures, they predict that cybercrime will cost the world more than $6 trillion annually by 2021, which is an increase, a huge increase from a couple of years ago. But they have a very serious business concept. They offer things that no one can resist, ransomware. They have small investments. Often they're using other people's equipment through hijacked computers or networks or botnets. Minimal risk to get caught, and it's tax-free. So cyber attacks are the fastest growing crime, at least in the United States, which is the statistics I found. And it's increasing both in size and sophistication, and, as I said, in costs. For a time, we have actually experienced that distributed denial of service attack had decreased, but now they are getting back. It's well documented that it has been a significant spike in DDoS attacks since the start of the pandemic. More people being online during lockdowns and work from home, that has proven to be lucrative even for the DDoSers. So that is another problem. A recent study, now working from home, we are reliant on our home routers, and you go to a shop, you buy the router, you install it, and then you think you're good to go. A recent study of more than 100 consumer wireless routers from 7 mostly large vendors show that almost all tested routers are vulnerable to many out of date and offer serious security flaws that put devices and their users at risk of attack. The study, called the Home Router Security Report 2020, was conducted by the German Fraunhofer Institute of Communication, Information Processing and Ergonomics, and looked at 127 different router models from big companies as Asus, AVM, D-Link, Linksys, Netgear, and all the name of them. Some routers have easily crackable or even well-known passwords that cannot even be changed by the user. More precisely, 50 routers came with hard-coded administrator information, including 16 with login information that was known or easy to guess. So I think that is something to be careful about. When did you last update your own router at home? And have you changed the password? Or can you even change the password? Is it even possible to do it? So let's talk about vulnerabilities. 10 years ago, I would claim it was not possible for just anyone to cut off the entire power grid for a country and from anywhere in the world. 10 years ago, it was not possible for just anyone to shut off, for instance, the port of Gothenburg in Sweden from anywhere in the world. And today we base the digitalization on the fact that everything is connected and attached to the internet, but we do not apply relevant protection. We take it for granted that all parts of our infrastructure just works. The truth is that the current situation leads to aggregation of risks. We're using the same platform, the same operating systems, the same encryption algorithms, cryptographic algorithms, and we have this all eggs put in the same basket, and the aggregation of risk has enormous proportions. If someone finds a vulnerability in some version of this operating system or the applications that is widely used, that will hit all the users of the same software, operating system, or device globally. So you can just imagine the effect that attack of that magnitude will have. And with what's called artificial intelligence, or rather augmented intelligence, in combination with big data, makes room for marvelous digital services. Sorry. Data is the raw material, and data analysis is the processing. We see it already today. We see movie recommendations from Netflix, music suggestions from Spotify, book reviews close to what you already bought on Amazon. All of these are early applications of using data or AI. And today it's possible to do much more than we actually do. And the reason we don't get any further, not as quick as we like, is there is a lack of widespread competence and knowledge. And we also are aware of the privacy issues that these brings to the table. To be able to do what we want to do within information security, and in order to protect our common infrastructure, we need resources. We can't really have everything on a few number of people's shoulders to solve this problem. What else is that we need working tools that is easy to use and still protects the users, easy to use and easy to understand. And we must be learning more about managing risks. It actually hurts to have an incident, but it doesn't hurt in the sense that a physical incident of the kind that this picture might illustrate, which makes it much harder for us to understand the importance of being proactive rather than reactive when it comes to information security. And the best way to make the internet more secure is to realize that you can't, exactly as Bruce Schneier says, because it's too complicated, too complex. We do need to do our best to secure our own environment, but still bad things will happen, no doubt. Just make sure that the consequences are kept to a minimum. That is why everybody today is talking about zero trust, the term for an evolving set of cybersecurity paradigms that move defenses from static, network-based perimeters to focus on users, assets, and resources. So zero trust, including network segmentation, access control, patches, updating schemas, monitoring, auditing, is what we call security in depth. These are your friends. These are what will protect you from, not from bad things, but from the bad consequences. The fact that more and more of our data is being stored in the cloud and among devices on the Internet of Things means that increasingly sensitive types of data are now more vulnerable than ever to being hacked, and more attractive, of course, to the hackers. On the other end of the string, trust has become one of the most powerful competitive differentiators in today's world. That is the defining quality that determines whether you can continue to do business and have flourishing customer relations. As technology connects more of our lives at an ever increasing pace, it is how vendors and service providers build and maintain trust that will govern the success of digital interactions. Today, you can't innovate a single thing without knowing how internet works. When you connect a device, again, a service, an IoT thingy, an industrial control system to the internet, your device, your service, your thingy, and your ICS becomes a part of the internet and exposed to millions of others. Turning off the internet still, as one of the biggest Swedish internet huggers, it's not an option. I mean, just imagine all the lovely things that internet is doing for us. But what we need to is take security by design and security by default seriously. That is the only protection we get right now. Zero Trust model uses this kind of micro segmentation to ensure least privilege access, as I mentioned, and the minimal attack surface, which minimize the consequences of an attack. So I really do not agree to this dark picture of what have I done with the internet, and it's not too late to make a difference. But you can't only focus on security. Then your technology and innovations could suffer from becoming inconvenient or maybe even unusable by the everyday end user. So security without convenience will probably hinder digital service deployment, and that is not what we are aiming for. I'm a bit worried about the regulation explosion that we see right now, because decision makers suddenly see that something is going on. So either they are starting to get control over things because they're starting to understand how it works, or they're just panicking. I don't really know if I have the right answer to this. But I know one thing, and that is that we know very little about the future. What we do know is that it isn't going to look like it does today. And still, we can't allow ourselves to be fully overwhelmed by the current hypes. Technical innovations aren't the driving force for our societal development. Innovations are tools. There's no silver bullet, there's no quick fix, only hard work, awareness, and willingness to create a better world, even online. And with that, I will end my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that, Anne-Marie. That was a fantastic presentation and some very telling images there that I do sometimes feel, you know, like that last depressing image that you showed. Oh God, what have I done, or what have we done with the internet? But I think at the same time, particularly in these times, we also feel that we've actually helped or contributed to something that is driving society forward, and keeping people together during crisis like this pandemic. I have a great question in the, it's a comment and a question by Jim Reed. And he says, in my opinion, and welcome Jim, good to see you here. In my opinion, the IT sector is incapable of fixing its security failings. The problem space is largely unchanged, but greatly increased for 40 to 50 years. Maybe it's time to apply adult supervision. For instance, why don't insurers certify IT systems like they do for safes, locks, burglar alarms, etc.? Why are software vendors able to avoid product liability and other legal action for supplying defective stuff that have security holes? Why can't the public buy stuff that has a safety or security certification, safe to connect to the internet, like we have for electrical devices that get plugged into the wall? Good question there for you, Ahmed.
It's a lovely question. It's very, very good. And that is the question I ask myself every morning, Jim. So I totally agree with you. And I think there are some movement among consumer protection organizations and governmental agencies, because, you know, these people who are promising you easier life or easier, more connected world, they are not doing this for the good of the world. They are doing it for one very, very single reason, and that is to earn money. And earning money doesn't really go well together with cheap devices that the consumer markets will have, and that will be presented under a lot of competition. So I do agree with you, and I think there's a lot we can do there. Again, there's one more thing that complicates, and it's easy to certify a teacup from, you can tell it is not allowed to have poisonal things included in it, but in a device, it's so many different dimensions, so many different vendors that will do this all together. And then again, you finally have this connection part. Sorry, I was distracted. So I don't have a very good answer to how to solve this, but I think it's important that we discuss it and that we try to make people work on it. That was a very long answer, sorry.
No, but it's a thoughtful answer. I guess also what you're saying, or I mean, it might not be, there's, like you're saying in the beginning, there's no silver bullet. There's not one thing that can solve this, but maybe that is one part of moving towards a secure internet, because it's complex and there's so many different components, even outside of that device, right?
Yeah, right. And I think we should be careful not saying more secure internet, a more secure usage of internet, more secure devices connected to the internet, because the internet itself it's quite stupid and doesn't really do much harm, as long as you can trust the internet service providers to do the right thing, or people to put enough of the physical cables under the ground, and so.
Good point. So I'll give people some more chance to ask some questions, and in the meantime, I'll take the opportunity to ask you some questions that I have. And so Mary Kakao gave a talk actually as part of the LINX Distinguished Speakers series a couple of months ago, and I recommend everyone to go and watch that because I think it's quite complementary to your presentation. And she talked about this thing about security is really about weighing different risks. You can't talk about ultimate security, or and you're also talking about this balance between convenience and security, that you need to consider both these things. But what I really liked in your presentation was one of these photos of the guy in the pool on the ladder installing something electrical, and just looking at that picture, made me cringe. And made me sort of, and I could almost feel that electrical shock. And you were saying that, so one of the reasons we're not so good at estimating risks in the online world is that we don't physically feel the pain as we do in the real world. So I guess it's more of a philosophical question, but what is required for us to actually fully understand the risks in the digital world?
Well, first of all, I mean, we as human beings, we are not very good at predicting risks. For instance, our brain is not made for that. I mean, we have spent serious time to learn to duck if something comes flying towards you. But trying to predict risks that might happen in the future is not our best thing actually to do. So what we need to do is to take it more methodological, to have, risk management, for instance, that is a part of both boards and management's responsibility. It usually has been like that. It's generally like that. But when it comes to cybersecurity, it's like, no, we don't do that. But understanding how digital transformation can be applied to risk management as a whole, that will enable organizations to take a more balanced view of digital technologies as both a source of risk and a way to manage risk, because, again, there's different sides of this coin. So identifying, understanding, and addressing new risks associated with the digital transformation, that will help businesses to derive more value for the efforts in the future. So you should ask yourself, do we link security to our brand and corporate image? Is that already implemented or integrated in day-to-day business, what we usually do? That is what's needed, I think.
And then, so, I mean, so you talk about different aspects, and often when people talk about security, you also, many people make the point that security is a shared responsibility. It's not one thing or one thing that you can fix. But if I take us back to Jim's question and the tech industry, what responsibility do we in the tech industry actually have to counter some of these cybersecurity challenges? What do we actually need to do to make it easier for the average user to use the internet and to use these devices more securely?
Well, cybersecurity, which is increasingly intertwined with privacy, aims to protect sensitive information. And because of that, the tech industry should be highly motivated to both design and build security into the products and systems by default and by design in order to protect the customers. That should be some of the priorities, actually. And I would like to see more companies that take responsibility in this direction. A lot of innovations, they aren't made for good reasons. Take, for instance, the increasing demand for surveillance from a number of nation states, where some companies agree to do this purely in the name of chasing money. And I believe ethics and values need to be more debated. With the increased threat of cyber attacks from nation states, for instance, hackers and criminal organizations alike, it has started to affect the way the world views the internet. Inadequate management of cyber threats puts users at risk, erodes the trust in the platform, and jeopardizes its ability to be a driver for economic and social innovation. And I mean, if I were running a company, that would be on my agenda when I have meetings with the board. What standpoint do we have in this? What ethical values are we willing to protect? What is our corporate image? So that's something to actually consider.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think when you look at some of the big tech giants, they've actually had to really consider this, and some of them are using it, some are. So for example, Apple going out and saying, we do not actually mine your data, we encrypt your, whatever your iMessage is and all that, that is actually appealing to some. But then of course, when it comes to the Internet of Things, there's so many devices out there where security is not even, it's clearly not a priority, but the user also doesn't seem to be aware of it. I'll give you an example of a friend of ours who, his daughter wanted to get this Fitbit device, and he read up on it and realized that, no, hang on, this is storing all sorts of data about you, and I don't like that. And he said no to his daughter. I'm like, okay. And then I think it was the following day when they came to see us, he said, oh, we're getting one of these cool robot vacuum cleaners. It maps out the house, and I can use my phone to put it on, turn it on and off, to program it. It's so cool. And I said, weren't you the same person who said that you didn't want your daughter to use this Fitbit because it maps out her movements? And he said, yeah, but they're pretty cool, these robot vacuum cleaners. So, what would you say to someone like that? How are we supposed to think about that and make sound decisions about it? Or maybe his decision was sound. What are your reactions to that?
Well, there where the companies who make these devices have a responsibility to educate the customers how they do connect this in a safe manner, what functions there are to reduce the amount of information shared, and there should be easy ways to avoid that kind of sharing. For instance, if it's about a child, Jim mentioned adult protection or adult filters, or I mean, that could be if you install that kind of thing and you tell, okay, this is for a user beneath a certain age, then it maybe shouldn't collect anything and just talk to the parent's device if needed. I'm not very keen on this kind of tracking devices for kids, but still, anyway.
Yeah. Fair enough. I see some more good questions. I have a comment from Jim again. If the car, let's say, had a design flaw that caused harm, there would be consequences. For a flaw in CPE or a browser, there isn't. And I think that's a good point. I have another comment from someone in the chat, Guylaine Salins. Thanks for the great presentation, Anne-Marie. Beyond security by design, what about the end of life gap? WannaCry and NotPetya showed how much users continue to use products after the end of life, which means that no more security support is provided. So it's an open bar for malicious actors. The end of life gap will probably be even more a more serious challenge for the IoT, leading to an IOFT, Internet of Forgotten Things. Right. Awareness raising won't be enough. Any views on how to close this gap?
Well, I think everything is possible to make automatic. So if it is the case that the vendor stops updating the software, then the device should disconnect automatically by itself and still function as a refrigerator or a toaster or whatever you got, to make sure that it does its job, but in an easier way, probably with less functions. But that is also something that a question that has been raised among consumer organizations, like, okay, if my refrigerator is supposed to work for like 10 years and the software updating stops after 5 years, what should I do? Should I throw it out after 5 years, even though it's still functional? I mean, that will not go very, very well in hand with the thoughts about sustainability and the environment that we are trying to raise today. That is quite important, especially in this industry, when we just throw things away and replace them with something better, newer, and more connected. So that is an important issue, which I don't have any answer to right now, but I think we should continue to bring that question to the table and ask, okay, what will happen? And I've been thinking, actually, we bought a used car some time ago, and that has also, some built-in functions, and it's connected to its vendor or its maker, whatever you can call it, and it communicates and get updates and everything. But what was the problem to us was that the former owner's information was still there when we bought it. All the routes, all the contacts, all the settings, everything was there. And again, whose responsibility is that? Is it the vendors? Should they reboot a car that changes owner? Is it the seller's responsibility? Should they reboot and erase everything that is on that car? Or is it the new owner's responsibility to make sure that you don't inherit any information that you shouldn't have? I don't know.
Anyone, I guess, who's rented a car at any time in the last 5 years have experienced that as well, right? That you can see a great history of not just music playing lists, but also the different routes that they've been taking with the car and what they programmed as their home address. And
if I may take an even more serious example, we are now building smart houses and smart apartments. And when I move into a new apartment, how can I make sure that the software installed in the walls, all the sensors everywhere in this house or apartment are updated? What they are there a declaration of this software is running in this apartment or this house? And how can I change that?
Yeah, well, yeah, no, good questions. And there's another, I guess, more of a rhetorical question or a comment by Jim saying, how can we trust or believe the tech giants when they say your privacy matters to us?
Yeah, especially when you catch them with the trousers down from time to time.
Exactly. Indeed. So last chance to ask any questions to Anne-Marie. I really enjoyed this. It's I guess it's a challenge, or you're putting a challenge to all of us as consumers, as policymakers, as device manufacturers, but also as organizations. So if we try to look to the future and try to look at sort of some constructive advice, if you were to give 3 sort of concrete tips to any organization to do today to make their companies more secure, do you have anything from the top of your head that you could throw at us?
Okay, on an organizational level, it should be to make sure that you have mapped your business critical assets, information assets, whatever you have, and what is that you need to survive. So what kind of incidents would have serious consequences if it happened? And this is not only about money, it's very much about trust and reputation, which is something that is difficult to regain if it's marginalized. That's my first advice. Make sure that you know what you need to protect, because you cannot protect everything. Secondly, make sure that everyone in the organization from the top down receives appropriate information security or cybersecurity training, whatever you choose to call it, and adapt education according to roles. It's not particularly relevant to put programmers or system architects on cybersecurity awareness training the same as you have for normal users or easy users. They rather need training on secure system development and what's required to achieve that. And it's irrelevant as well to put training on repeat annually, year after year, not changing it. I mean, frequent recurring training efforts and constant reminders are needed, along with in-depth specialization, because this area moves very quickly. And thirdly and finally, get control. Hire someone if you don't manage to carry out yourself. But do make an audit that checks what is our state of the art. What is it like? Do we have everything in place to keep a high level of information or cybersecurity? Or is there more things that we can do? You should have an appropriate plan for dealing with cybercrime, not least incidents related to ransomware attacks, which are very obvious threats today. I mean, how do you explain to the board that you have to put an enormous sum of money in the hands of criminals to get your system back in order, rather than putting money to prevent that from happening? Now, I should say it's not easy to totally prevent it, but you can do some things to decrease the risk. Sorry.
Yeah. Great advice. I'll take that back to make sure that we've done so as well at LINX. I know that there's a very high, there is a high focus on security at LINX, and it's also, of course, a matter of us as staff members following some of the advice that we get given. So I don't see any more questions in the chat, and we are coming up to the hour. Thank you so much for that presentation, Anne-Marie. Do you have any final words that you want to say? Then now's the time to do it. Leave us with some good wise comments.
Now, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure. What I would like to ask all of you is, don't believe that anyone else will take care of this for you. Make sure that you contribute the way you can in different areas, different organizations, and we will fix this, I promise.
Fantastic. Thanks again. Thank you, of course, Anne-Marie. This was a great presentation. We will make sure it's available on the LINX website and YouTube as well. So feel free to go back and watch it again. Thank you to all of you who participated. Do please keep an eye out on the LINX website for upcoming presentations and tutorials. We've been doing a lot of them, and there's some fantastic upcoming presentations, but there've also been very good presentations that we've already put out. So go and have a look at those. And with that, I'd like to, of course, again, give a special thanks to Anne-Marie for taking the time to share this very interesting presentation. It's been a real pleasure listening to your talk. And with that, thank you. And thanks to all of you, and be well, stay healthy and safe. Take care, and hope to see you all very soon. And perhaps some of you even in person at some point next year.
It would be great. Bye.